All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here bringing our preview and prediction for the 2025 South Carolina Gamecocks. Looking at the staff, Shane Beamer, 29-22 through 4 seasons. Mike Shula, second year on staff, first in the role of offensive coordinator. Then Clayton White, fifth year in the role as the DC. Pretty respectable offseason, top 20 classes on the portal cycle, and then in the recruiting trail as well. 9-4 last season while fielding one of the top defenses in the country. Starting with the South Carolina offense, this is a unit that was fairly good. I mean, the run game was very dominant. They had, ideal balance for the most part throughout the year. Ended up scoring about 31 points per game. They get back 6 starters from that unit. And that includes, one of the top quarterbacks in the country in Lenore Sellers. The athletic ability, the running skills matched with his size is no secret. Nick, 6'3", 242. This kid also showcases absurd pocket elusiveness. Nice shiftiness as well at the second level. Showcases good patience with a clean pocket, allowing a clean, fluid release. Shows good control while throwing on the run. The game against Clemson faced peer pressure on every drawback. Showed good ball placement. Knew where his matchups were. Doesn't always go through his reads, but definitely demonstrated football IQ. And I think a weak offensive line could have made him antsy at times. A great player here. Does need to work on ball security significantly, though. He had 11 fumbles and 7 interceptions. I had him pegged as a top 5 quarterback going into 2025, Nick. I was really impressed with what I saw on film. I remember the Missouri game as well. He had made numerous plays on the run, and I don't think he overshot a single receiver outside of the throwaways. This kid's really good.
Lenore Sellers is a star in the making. Lenore Sellers could become the number 1 overall pick in the draft next year. Lenore Sellers could certainly contend for the Heisman. These are all very true statements that I believe. This is a kid that's absolutely phenomenal, incredibly talented, and the sky's the limit. This kid is so talented. He's got great field vision, really solid on the ground, really solid through the air. Just so much to like about him other than the turnovers. That's the biggest downside, right? The turnovers is concerning. Nearly 20 turnovers between fumbles and interceptions, 7 interceptions, the 11 fumbles. Yeah, that's a problem, and you got to find a way to cut that down. 6'3", 240, just incredible size, really good arm strength, 2,500 yards passing last year, 18 touchdowns and 7 rushing touchdowns. You saw him get a little more comfortable running the ball towards the end of the season. Had two key rushing touchdowns against Clemson, had a key run against Missouri to set them up to win that game. Had a solid rushing touchdown against Wolford, a FCS opponent as well. So he's certainly found a way to improve his ability on the ground. I absolutely love this kid. I think he can put all the pieces together here. He's an incredibly talented young man that's got a sky-high potential, a really good wide receiver room that's returning this year. Another year in the system to get comfortable and continue to develop as a player. Just got to protect the football. As long as he protects the football, everything else here I think will come around and develop for him. I'm super excited to watch what this kid can do this year.
Ran for 166 and 2 scores against Clemson, and that 3-point victory really put them on his back in that one. They also picked up Aaron Nolan, a former high-ranked 4-star recruit from Ohio State at quarterback, so they do have a nice pocket passer behind him, if need be. You look at the backfield, because this is a group that, of course, they were great at running the football. It was a perfect combo having the size of Sellers and Raheem Sanders in that backfield. It really just allowed them to fall forward on every single play. They're not going to have that exact same luxury coming into the season. They do have Oscar Attaway, though, 6'2", 223, more of a bruiser. This is his 6th year of college football, though, so he's been around for a little bit, and his production's never been great, but he'll have that type of role this year. The top back's going to be Rochelle Fajon. They picked him up from Utah State. Great gap scheme runner. Impressive elusiveness. Very hard to get their hands on him. It seems he seems to run like he's on a tightrope with quick feet. Very good moves and vision in the hole. Pretty nasty player here. I loved what I saw. He had 0 fumbles on 315 snaps, 5'11", 200. You look at the rest of the running back room. Jawarn Howell might step into that role because he's a bigger back of, a short yardage guy, goal line back. He's also going to bring some good acceleration to the table. And you also have a true freshman, Jaquel Hallman, who might find some time as well. Pretty solid backfield here. Should be just fine, especially with Sellers getting a bulk of the load next to the running back room. Won't have as many responsibilities. They're still a key part of this offense if they want it to work. What do you expect?
Yeah, I think that Sellers will be able to relieve some of the pressure on this backfield. I think Faison was a solid add from Utah State, about 1,100 yards rushing last year for him on 200 carries, 8 touchdowns, 5.6 yards per carry. Solid, had a decent 2023 as well of 736 and 5 scores there. Not a bad add. This is a guy that you can do a lot with here. He's a player that can certainly develop for this offense. No issues there. Oscar Attaway is a solid asset as well. 300 yards rushing for him and 3 scores. Good player, also involved in the pass game occasionally. And then obviously Sellers is a big key of this offense, and he will be able to run the ball a ton. We talked about his stats, 675 and 7 scores for him last year on the ground. Expect a lot out of him on the ground this year as well. I'm not too concerned about this rushing attack. I think this rushing attack will be just fine. What they have here, I think it's a really big strength for this offense.
Now you look at the wide receiver room. Of course, you got to start with Nick Harbor. This is a guy who's got unreal blend of size, speed, and athletic ability at 6'5", 235. He's great at the catch point. Does he have to emerge in the pass game, though? This is a guy who has an immense amount of talent. He's just not really showcased it yet. I think it was against Alabama. He had a phenomenal touchdown reception in that one. It's highlights like that he's capable of making, but we haven't really seen on a consistent basis. Most importantly, though, he's going to be focusing just on football now. He was competing in track and field as well. I spoke to Arian Smith at Georgia Tech a couple months ago, and he said, the biggest reason for a breakout season was because he focused on football and put down the track, and that's going to lead to, in terms of your body, better health. It's also going to allow more consistency on the football field. So I think Harbor finally going to have that breakout season for him. He's not the only one, though. Jared Brown really struggled, but I didn't think he was really utilized properly. He was used out wide pretty much on every rep, not in the slot really at all, where he was, thriving at Coastal Carolina. Good intermediate crosser. He's hard to bring down in space. Has good speed. I think he should bounce back if he's utilized properly. Mazio Bennett, though, he emerged as the top slot weapon for him last year, showcasing speed and short area quickness. Vendrevius Jacobs only saw brief touches. Tight end Michael Smith, I expect big things from him. 6'6", 255, top 100 recruit last year. He has short area quickness, some impressive separation skills, nice power as well that allows extra yards after catch. Needs to get better as a blocker to stay on the field consistently. Wide receiver depth is scarce. They bring in 6 true freshmen overall, 3 being 4 stars led by Malik Clark. Not all that concerned with this pass catching group due to the scheme, Nick, because again, they love to pound the rock so much. What do you think of this wide receiver group? Because I think they have a nice group of starters here, but Brown, he doesn't play really in his natural position, and Harbor has yet to break out yet, so it could go from bad to worse potentially.
This is a unit that has to find a way to get consistency. There's a lot of talented pieces here, but they have to put the consistency together. Nick Harbor, a fan favorite in CFB 25, a fun player to play off in that game, and such an incredible athlete. Obviously has incredible speed. It's good that he's focusing fully on football. I think that will certainly help out his game a lot. The speed of him is just absolutely incredibly and dynamic. 376 yards receiving, 14.5 yards per grab, and 3 scores. Want to find a way to get that better. I think he can double those numbers this year. He'll be a big target for this team. Jared Brown, 244 and a score for him last year. He'll certainly get some more targets this year. He could be a key asset as well for this team. I like what they have in Bennett. This is a kid who's pretty talented. Last year we saw it in flashes, certainly 337 and 3 touchdowns for him. He had some good games, had a good game against Mizzou, had a good game against Alabama as well, scored a touchdown in that game. Scored a touchdown against Akron as well, bad team, but still a good moment there for him. Expect him to be involved in this. If they play everyone in the right position, they move some pieces around, they make sure they get everyone playing where they're most comfortable. This could be a really good 3-headed monster in the SEC.
A lot of youth in this receiving room across the board, but again, there's not too many guys you're probably going to have to lean on. You have 3 good starting receivers and a tight end I think is going to contribute. So they should be fine here in this group. Look at the offensive line. South Carolina has allowed exactly 41 sacks in each of the last 2 seasons. This has been a big group. It's a work in progress for the Gamecocks. Josiah Thompson at left tackle struggled bad in his first year as a starter. He was a second-ranked offensive tackle in last year's recruiting class, though, and he was actually very strong against Clemson. I think he's going to be just fine. Third-year man in Tree Babalati was the starting left tackle in 23 as an X4-star. He also struggled, but he's likely going to be kicking inside to left guard. Marquis Anderson's going to be pushing him for that starting job. Center was an area of strength. They now replace Rashawn Lee with Boaz Stanley, who was good for Troy, but he did struggle in pass pro, but was much better late in the year for the Trojans. Trevon Baugh has big shoes to fill at right guard. He started in 2023, but he was benched this past year. You also have a guy, he himself is 6'5", 337, that is. Carson Henry also struggled a great bit at right tackle in his first year as a starter, entering his 4th year in the program. Solid portal work here. You picked up Nick Sharp, 6'2", 335, was a great right guard for Wake Forest this past fall. Rodney Newsom, 300-plus pounds, comes in from Western Kentucky. Also had a strong season at right guard. So some quality options in the rotation. Brought in no transfers at tackle. They did add 2 more 4-stars, though. This offensive line should improve. I'm still iffy on it, but this is probably the best group they've had since Beamer's arrived.
I think Stanley's a solid add out of the portal, a guy that was really solid, could certainly play center. I think Newsom is a good add out of the portal, a guy that you could play at right guard or left guard. I think Trevon Barr has certainly improved his game at right guard, but still a solid player. Josiah Thompson has to improve at left tackle. I'm worried about him, but he's a younger guy, so I think he can certainly find a way to get there together and build his full game. Carson Henry, that is, has to improve his games as well at right tackle. I'm worried about the offensive line still, right? This is still a weaker unit in the conference. I think, we pegged it as our weakness for this offense for a reason. season, but I think it's getting better. I think some of those younger guys will get more experience. I like the direction this offensive line is going, and overall, I think it's certainly be part of this offense that's continuing to grow and be a better unit come the end of the season.
Looking at the offensive verdict, South Carolina is tough to defend due to its run scheme and size. How much improvement is in store really comes down to how much impact the intermediate downfield passing game can generate, along with the offensive line progression. Should see this group get better in all areas, Nick, across the board. I'm still only going to go with a B+. What's the ceiling here? Do you think this is too rough of a grade, or does it make a lot of sense? It feels a little too disrespectful, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense when you consider the weaknesses.
I think a B+, A- is certainly where this team lands. I think they can improve all the numbers from last year, and then they can find a way to improve points per game, yards per game, pass yards per game. Maybe not rush yards per game. It might be tough to improve that number, but I think you can certainly improve your pass yards per game, which was 75th in the nation, as well as your yards per game, which is 45th in the nation, and 30.5 points per game. You can certainly find a way to improve that number as well. I love Sellers. I think he can certainly win the Heisman. He'll certainly contend for that, in my opinion. He can be really good for this team. A phenomenal player. That's really a great dual threat. I like what they added in Faison. I think he'd be really solid for this team. If the three-headed monster at wide receiver can be a three-headed monster, this team will go certainly very far. Concerned about the O-line, but I think there's a lot of high upside there as well. Excited to watch this offense play this year.
Now we move to the defensive side of the ball, a group that was flat-out elite for South Carolina a season ago. They returned only 3 starters, though. They picked about 9-10 guys in the portal, a lot of them on the defensive line. One of those returning starters, an ex-5-star, and Dylan Stewart, instantly showcased a lot of strengths for this team. Shows great burst, has a lot of power. Elite lateral agility really allows him to slice through gaps. He's a good effort player. Wasn't very consistent versus the run, though, and did show some poor tackling in a few games as well, but as a true freshman, some of those weaknesses certainly expected. He's considered a top 10, top 15 player in the country right now. Looking at the rest of the D-line, Brian Thomas really emerged in the back half of the season. He seems primed to take a big step forward as he offered quality play in all facets at one of the other edge positions. Desmond Umeozolo didn't play much last year, but was a top 120 recruit in the class of 23. Good twitch, length, and a good effort. I imagine his technique has gotten a lot better as well. Picked up another ex-top 120 recruit, this one via transfer from Missouri. Noted as a good athletic edge at 6'5", 265. You also got Damon Clowney coming over from Charlotte. Has improved his game the last 2 seasons, but don't expect him to come in and be a stud based off name value alone, as during his 5 years, he hasn't been all that impactful. The interior defensive line loses a lot of heat. Nick, the guy from Missouri I was referring to is Jalen Brown. Back to the interior line, though, they lose a lot of heat. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, an ex-5-star, did much really in his career at Texas A&M. He is 6'3", 310, though. Xavier Hardy, the top-ranked JUCO recruit, is coming in. You know how I feel about JUCO guys, Nick. I don't really expect them to deliver a whole lot. Devontae Mills from Bowling Green he wasn't very good for them. Must see some potential, though. He's 6'5", 275. Wandarius Porter didn't see much time as an ex-walk-on, and Mikael Goodwine was average in his playing time last fall. Interior D-line, to me, is pretty weak on paper. I'm confident in the staff, being able to get these guys in touch. I don't think they're going to be elite at all like they were last year, Nick. And that group from last year took a lot of development over time outside of a couple transfers they added. I'm not feeling this D-line really one bit. I think Thomas can be good, and Dylan Stewart, of course, is tremendous. But other than that, I'm just not all that high.
I like the edge rushers, do not like the interior. Dylan Stewart, coming out of our nation's capital, has been a phenomenal player for this team. 23 total tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 4 QB hurries, 3 forced fumbles. I can go on and on. Phenomenal player. I think the size on him, the speed on him is phenomenal. He's just an incredibly talented young man. Excited to see him take the next step forward. I think Brian Thomas will take that next step forward. 23 total tackles last year, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks for him. He had a good season last year. I think he's a solid player that they return back. Mikael Goodwine as well returns for this team, 15 total tackles and a tackle for loss on the interior. Maybe he'll get some reps. I think Xavier Hardy could be a solid player coming out of the JUCO ranks. I'm a little more, optimistic in terms of JUCO players coming from East Mississippi Community College. They put out a couple of decent players here and there, but I understand you're pessimistic maybe to jump on a guy from JUCO. Certainly a big jump. Brownlow-Dindy is a player that could be really solid for this team. Clowney could be solid in the reps that he gets as well. Jalen Brown's not a bad add from Missouri either. I worry about the interior. I'm certainly keeping an eye on that, but I like what they have on the edge there. That 1-2 punch of Stewart and Thomas could really be deadly this year.
I mean, just the historical thing on JUCOs is these guys who are top-ranked JUCO players just never seem to do anything. So I don't think I'm being harsh at all. Maybe they can get something out of them, though, but typically that seems to be the case. Looking in the middle of this defense, Justin Okoronkwo barely played for Alabama this past year. He's considered a phenomenal athlete, though, with great speed. Should be a good breakout player. I think he's going to do great. Fellow ex-Bama linebacker Sean Murphy also arrives. Didn't see any more time with FSU either in 2024. Fred Johnson, a second-year man who was a top 110 ranked recruit last fall. Great versatile athlete who can make an impact off the edge or be a sideline-to-sideline Mike. I think that this is a nice 1-2 punch here between Johnson and Okoronkwo. Jerron Willis hasn't done much in his 3 years. Mike is surpassed on the depth chart by Donovan Darden, who's a freshman, top 100 recruit. The depth is a little iffy to me. I'm not really so certain on it. But again, the two starters, Nick, I think are great. And it's going to be one of the top linebacking duos, not just in the conference, probably the whole country.
I like this linebacking duo a lot. I think Ronkero could really do a lot for this team. He was Nick Saban's first, I believe, only international recruit coming from Munich, Germany. A really cool ad. Didn't really get a whole lot of opportunities at Alabama, but as an Alabama fan, I'm disappointed to see him go. I thought he could be really solid for the Crimson Tide in the future. 14 total tackles, kind of a fun tidbit that the Nick Saban went out to the international area and started recruiting some talented players towards the end of his career. Could be really solid at linebacker for this team. I'm excited to see his step forward. Fred Johnson's a guy that will take that big step forward as well. These are two guys that, they're younger players. I think they're inexperienced, and their experience will show early on. But these are two guys that could turn into absolute stars come the end of the season at linebacker.
When I look at the secondary, this was another strong suit for South Carolina. They gave up 285 yards exactly to both LSU and Ole Miss. And they gave up 280 to Clemson late in the year. But, this was a secondary that didn't really have any bad games. I think the LSU game, they gave up some big plays. I was like it, though, Nick, throughout the year. They were pretty rock solid in the back end. Of course, they're going to undergo a massive overhaul. Nice physical corner they added from NC State and Brandon Sissy. He's been impressive. Yet to play a full workload, though. He's going to take over a full-time cornerback role this fall, I'd imagine. Miles Norwood was a solid player for Ball State last season. Judge Collier played plenty throughout the year and was solid. Showcased significantly better tackling after struggling the first month of the year. He's going to play a big role this year. Bakari Swain got on the field plenty as an ex-top 120 ranked recruit. Jalen Kilgore, this is the big star here. 2-year starter in the slot. Should really mold into a star following a 5-interception season. You have a 4-year starter in DQ Smith at safety. He's back coming off of his best year from a coverage standpoint. He's going to be leaned on plenty as a leader in the back end. Peyton Williams likely to start alongside him, but hasn't seen much time on the field. I think depth is quite unproven at safety, but at corner, I think they're going to be just fine here. And I love some of the additions they have. The return of this trio right here, though, Nick and Smith, Collier, and Kilgore, I think is going to make sure they're just fine. With slight regression, maybe, because I don't think the pass rush is going to be as elite as it was last year, so their responsibilities are going to be a lot tougher. I don't think they're going to be getting carved up in many games, though.
I don't think they'll be carved up in many games either. This is a very good unit that returns some solid assets and adds a good asset, starting with Cisse, who they pick up from NC State, 28 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 5 pass breakups. He was good in coverage last year. I think he's a really solid add for this team. I think you can get a lot out of him, a guy that's, been around the game for a little bit here. Miles Norwood was a solid add as well, a guy that's got some good experience. Bringing back Kilgore is obviously a huge thing. This is a kid that's continued to develop. 48 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 5 interceptions last year, and 5 pass breakups. He's just a really talented player that's getting better as the seasons go on, playing that right corner spot. Playing nickelback. The player at right corner is Judge Collier, who's a really solid player. 28 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 8 pass breakups. That's a really big, nasty 1-2 punch there. 2 really solid players. And you throw in Peyton Williams, who's a really solid player as well, plus DK Smith, who's been really good for them. DQ Smith, 37 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a pick. And then Peyton Williams showed some progress last year. 19 total tackles, 2 pass breakups for him. I like this secondary a lot. This is a very good unit. I think some people are underrating this unit as well. I like what they have here. A really good list of guys. Some guys that play some really good football. Hard-hitting, clean tacklers. I like this secondary a lot.
Now we look at the defensive verdict. The Gamecocks unit is in for a significant fall-off as numerous high-end talent departs across the board. I think the pass rush should be good enough. The interior D-line is honestly quite poor. Middle of the defense will possess good athletic ability. I think the secondary will be just fine, but I don't think collectively they're going to be anywhere near as strong as they were a season ago, Nick. And I know that's really harsh, but this defense was elite last year because of what they had up front. Every single player got drafted. Dylan Stewart's going to go first round someday himself. They had great rotation on the interior with size. They did a great job of developing everybody. Of course, Kyle Kennard was player of the year. His defensive end position. I just think that, I know it was just a collective group as well because you had numerous other guys go early in the draft, at linebacker, at safety as well. The D-line were incredible tone setters. I just don't think you're going to see that this year, leading to improved responsibilities, or enhanced responsibilities, I should say, for the rest of this group. So I'm going to go with a B. Is that too harsh? Because I'm just not really feeling it because this D-line I don't think is really going to be all that great.
Regression was certainly imminent considering the type of talent they lost. They lost a ton of talented pieces. You listed some of those guys there: Kyle Connor, TJ Sanders, Debo Williams, all tough players to replace. I think the interior defensive line is certainly a concern, but I like the edge rushing unit a lot. I'm a little more optimistic here. I certainly would give this defense a B+. I like what they have at linebacker, even if they're two unproven guys. They're two guys that can certainly be boom prospects. And I think the secondary is a phenomenal unit. I think the secondary is getting a little slept on at times. I like what they return there. I'm giving this unit a B+ here, and this defense is still a really good unit. They were phenomenal last year, right? Top 15 in points per game, top 20 in yards per game, and rush yards per game. I like what this team can do. I think this defense will be really strong this year, even if it will be a step back from the highs they achieved last year.
I look at the schedule and the prediction for South Carolina. They really emerged last year as a top-notch contender due to that elite defense and a young quarterback that they scream great usage for. And for the physical run game, an improved passing game, I think will once again make them a tough out. But the defense won't offer that same presence, and overall, it's going to limit the upside. And of course, it's going to give Sellers less room for error, Nick. Very tough schedule leads to me giving them a harsh prediction. I know we seem to do this every year with South Carolina because their schedule's tough, and we don't usually dish out a good record prediction for them. Starting 5-0, only lose 5 in a row. I think it's very realistic, though. I think they can beat OU. I think Alabama, that's a winnable game as well. I know you have them beating Texas A&M on the road. I think Ole Miss is potentially beatable. I mean, these are all winnable games, right? Even home at Clemson is 6-6 for me. Will this be their final record? Probably not. Probably 8-4, something like that. Because I'm sure the defense will end up being better than I'm assuming it will be. But I think it's a pretty good way to structure it, Nick. Because again, Sellers, he's great, but it's going to be less room for error here. They're not going to be able to make up for it.
I'm sure this team will find a way to upset somebody that we gave them a loss to here. I think they'll beat A&M. They'll be on a 4-game skid there. Then they'll just be the most Aggie thing in the world to lose to South Carolina, that team that's limping at that moment in time. That's more about A&M. I'll talk about them when we do that preview. I have my own sort of thoughts and opinions on that team. I think 7-5 for me. Yeah, they could potentially lose week 1 against Virginia Tech in a game in Atlanta in a neutral site, in quotations, close enough to both schools, I guess. Kind of a little bit out of the way maybe from both schools, but an interesting matchup there. I believe that's on Sunday, August 31st. If I'm not mistaken, you can fact check me on that one. But that's a very interesting matchup. I'm excited to watch that one. A key game going down in Atlanta. I think the schedule starts off with some nice matchups, but then you get your tough heavy hitters there in that 5-game stretch. Could they beat Alabama on a homecoming on October 25th? I think it's certainly possible. Could they beat Oklahoma on October 18th? I think that's very possible as well. I'm high on Oklahoma. I'm high on Alabama, so I think they will win both those games. Brutal 3 road games, but I do think they find a way to beat A&M. And then Clemson. They've beaten Clemson in recent years a couple of times, so I think this is a team that could potentially shock Clemson here. This rivalry has a lot of good battles. I know they knocked Clemson out of playoff contention just a couple of years ago, and they always seem to give Dabo a run for his money. At home this year, they beat them last year. At home this year, they can certainly put up a big opportunity to win that game in their home stadium. That would be a big opportunity for them. I think those fans would absolutely love to see that. So maybe keep an eye on that game as well. This is a tough schedule, right? There's no way to say that it's not a tough schedule. Adding Virginia Tech just makes it a little bit tougher in the non-conference. Brutal draws certainly comes to SEC play. I like this team a lot. I like the offense. I like the defense, but I just think it's tough with this schedule. So you're gonna have to find a way here to find tough wins here. I'm gonna go 7-5 ultimately, but I do like this team a lot.
Yeah, you're right about that. The game against Virginia Tech is indeed on a Sunday afternoon, and we both love Shane Beamer. He's a phenomenal coach, one of the best in the country, so no knock on him. This is the one that I'm sure we're going to be pretty wrong about, Nick, but we're going to handle that with grace when the day comes.
We will certainly handle that with grace, and looking forward to seeing what this team can do this year.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.